What's going on, guys? Tower number 9 here, and today we're going to do another video from the Showdown Poznan event. So we will have some more Star Wars Unlimited gameplay here. And shout out to Sklad Gear for hosting this event and putting this footage up on their channel. As I discussed in the previous video, this footage didn't have any audio, so I am going to be essentially putting my own commentary over the tournament footage that they have here. So this time we have a round between Jacob and Marcelli, not sure. And it looks like they are both playing Sabine Green. So let's see which of these players is going to be more successful with with the highly popular Sabine Green build. Let's go. And I am trying it here on normal playback speed. Last time it was a little sped up. There was someone who preferred not in the comments, so I figured we'd do this one at normal speed. Sabine games tend to be fast anyway. And let me know if you prefer the 1.25x speed or whether you prefer the normal speed in the comments below. This is a normal speed game, and I am open to suggestions as to how to do the rest of these. All right. So both players thinking about their resourcing decisions early on in the game. Looks like Jacob decides to go for the mulligan here. So we're gonna have to think about whether or not whether or not you want to mulligan for arena dodging when going second. So in this matchup, there's an interesting dynamic where if you go first, some of your units counter the equivalent unit. Um, by just having the first attack. So a good example of that is Green Squadron A-Wing, which is a 1/3 with Raid 2. So in the event that both players play Green Squadron A-Wings, the person who has the initiative can attack and destroy the enemy unit and does not lose their own unit. So that's actually a really big advantage. Similarly, Sabine ran Explosives Artist, 2 cost 2/3. On attack can deal 1 damage to the defending unit. So again, both players play Sabine Explosives Artist. The player who has the initiative gets to defeat the other one. So there's a serious argument for trying to arena dodge in this matchup if you're going second, and intentionally trying to mulligan into a hand where you have a cheap unit for both ground and space. Um, does not look like Jacob has achieved that though. In fact, I'm not sure he actually has a turn one play. I didn't exactly see what was in hand. Marcelli leads off with the Green Squadron A-Wing, and it looks like Jacob indeed missed the turn one play, just taking the initiative, not where you want to be in this very aggro mirror. Um, Unfortunate situation there. Not sure what his percentages are in the build, but in general, when I'm playing this sort of Sabine deck, I'm often playing like mini uh mini two drops. It'll be I think the current version that I have has like 12 to 15 two drops plus the 3 Spec Force soldiers. That's like something like 15 to 18 units that you could play on the first turn. So having nothing at all is pretty brutal, quite frankly. Um, though, of course, Jacob could be using a different composition that doesn't have quite as much in the early game as some of the builds that I've been using. That is very possible. Let's see what's going on here. Ooh. Yeah, so we see the energy conversion lab used for an ambush here with a red 3, attacking and defeating the opposing green squadron A-wing. Very reasonable play here from Jacob. Um, and we'll see if ECL is used back. Interestingly, it's not. Marcelli just plays the green squadron A-wing. Yeah, that's kind of a surprising play to me because Jacob can take the initiative now, and his red 3 can just attack and defeat another A-Wing. I'm surprised that he didn't use ECL to remove his opponent's red 3. It would put 2 damage on the A-Wing, but that seems like it would be a substantially better move in this situation. Maybe he's saving ECL, so maybe he has Steadfast Battalion or something, and he thinks he can get more value out of it later. But I would personally not want to just play an A-Wing into Red 3 like that, because Red 3 can attack and defeat it while remaining alive, since that A-Wing only hits for 1 damage on the defense. It's an interesting play, but we'll see what Marcelli's planning. It's very possible that he has a bigger play with ECL in mind. Looks like Jacob's having some difficulties or just taking his time thinking about what to resource on this turn. Ends up going with, I think that's a gorilla attack pod that he's considering resourcing there. But he's reconsidering. Ends up being something else. Couldn't quite tell what that one was. Yeah, as I had discussed, Jacob's red 3 just takes out the A-wing with not much of a problem. So that red 3 has gotten a lot of value for Jacob. Already killing 2 units and remaining on the board could easily end up being a 3-for-1 in this game. Though if there is another ambushing, if there is a fighter to ambush it with ECL, that would be able to remove it without being defeated in return, unless it were a wing leader, which would trade, but it would trade while buffing. Spec Force Soldier swings into the base for 2, and amusingly, I think that may be the first damage taken by either base in this game. It looks like the players are maybe using like a phone app or something to track damage that isn't visible on the camera. I believe that currently Jacob has taken 2 damage and Marcelli's taken 0 damage. I'm gonna have to be on my game commentating this to keep track of the life totals. Okay, so Jacob uses Sabine explosives artist, or I'm sorry, Sabine leader, and deals 1 damage to each base. And okay, so well, that's interesting. Okay, so now the other Sabine is also used, and it looks like Marcelli is keeping track of his base life with a die. So I believe that we have 4 damage on Jacob's base, 2 damage on Marcelli's base. K2SO hits the field from Jacob. Very strong unit in this game. Very strong unit, but we now see Sabine take the field for Marcelli. Jacob Sabine will, of course, probably also deploy this turn. I'm wondering if Marcelli's going to go for one of those wing leaders that he has in hand, buffing his Sabine and allowing her to defeat that K2. That would be I think, a pretty reasonable plan, honestly. If you don't deal with that K2, I mean, he could even ECL ambush the wing leader, defeat Red 3. Huh, did he? Okay, so Jacob brings out Sabine of his own. Both Sabines on the field now. Marcelli uses ECL. Is he going to go for the wing leader ambush? Yeah, he is. So the wing leader ambushes Red 3, getting Red 3 off the field and buffing Sabine. Now, I think this is like a pretty decent play, but I also note that he probably should have ambushed if he was just going to do the ambush to take out the Red 3, he probably should have ambushed it last turn with the A-wing instead of doing this. Um, then he would have only lost 2 fighters to Red 3 instead of 3 of them. Looks like Jacob Sabine takes out the Spec Force soldier that was still on the field, taking 2 damage. Marcelli has buffed Sabine here. So I think we have 3 damage on Marcelli's base, 4 damage on Jacob's base right now. Huh. Interesting. It seems Marcelli has. Oh, nice. And now it looks like they are using tokens for that damage. Or maybe they were the whole time and it was just obscured by that X mark or whatever. So that should be an additional 5 damage. So I think that should now be 9 total damage on Jacob's base. So Marcelli's ahead in the race, but I I'm a little surprised that he didn't take out K2 there. because I think that damage from K2 is going to start adding up. We'll see though. Maybe his plan is to just race. I think he had another wing leader in hand. So in principle, he could actually use that other wing leader to buff his Sabine Wren further and then just try to step on the gas here. But we're going to have to see whether or not that's the tactic that he goes for. There's obviously a lot of different things that you could try to do. Even in this aggro mirror, this game does have a lot of decisions, I feel. And there are some real questions about what the most efficient thing to do with your cards and resources is. Um, Jacob looks to have a hand with a lot of different units there. Both players still resourcing, which is not always something you do with a Sabine deck. It kind of depends on what you have in hand. I guess with these modern decks, you're more likely to keep resourcing so that you can hit the gorilla attack pod. But the some Sabine decks with a low cost curve might honestly stop resourcing at 4 and just be like, okay, let's play 2/2 drops. Although I do think there's like even in that sort of build, I do think there's a reasonable chance that you'll go up to 5 resources. Because by going up to 5 resources, you can play a 3 drop and a 2 drop on the same turn, and that does tend to be quite relevant. Jacob with the initiative let's this turn. Let's see what he does with it. Fleet Lieutenant. That's going to when played, you can attack with a rebel unit and give it +2 power for the attack. And it looks like that attack is going to be a swing from K2. Oh, interesting. Marcelli put the damage on his copy of Sabine, and Jacob just moved it to the base. That's funny. I was saying interesting because to me it seemed likely better to be attacking the base instead of Sabine, and that's what Jacob thought too. So 6 damage on the base. Echo base defender hits the field, but a Spec Force soldier removes Sentinel from it. This will allow Jacob's Sabine to attack the base for another 3 damage unless Marcelli uses his Sabine to defeat Jacob's. And that is what Marcelli chooses to do. So with the buff there, that's going to allow him to defeat his opponent's copy of Sabine. And I'm not sure that they're adding damage to the base. It may be a missed trigger here. So on attack, Sabine gets to deal 1 damage to the opponent's base, but it doesn't seem to me that they have done that. Maybe they noted it, but didn't actually put a damage counter on. I'm not sure. And it's also possible that ability was forgotten. So hard to say there. Hard to say there. Shout out again to Sklad Gear for hosting this event and doing a live stream. I'm going to move to the side here so you can see their logo more. So yeah, that is the Sklad Gears, and I believe they are the ones responsible for this event, the Super Showdown Poznan, played in Poland, where Poland is sometimes a quite strong region in the world of card games, and they are getting off to a strong start with this new card game. Also, it is very possible that I will be pronouncing many names wrong in this video. My apologies. But I think that Poland in particular, at least for in the United States, has a reputation of having many words that are difficult to pronounce. Uh, So now we have an attack from K2, defeating the Echo base defender, dealing 1 damage with Overwhelm to the base, then 3 more damage thanks to the when defeated trigger. Looks like there's now 14 damage on Marcelli's base, and I believe it is 9 on Jacob's base. However, Marcelli still does have the buffed Sabine Wren. It will be interesting to see how this game continues here. They're consolidating the tokens, it seems like. Okay, so it is 10. So I guess they did not forget the Sabine trigger. Wow. Another wing leader buffing Sabine further. Now with 4 experience, that Sabine is quite the threat. Jacob pushes for more damage to the base, swinging in with a fleet lieutenant, although it isn't. Did they add the damage? Hmm. Well, I'm pretty sure that was a hit for 3 to base. Hang on, I'm gonna pause this and move back a bit because I am confused. Yeah, so it's 14 damage before. Sorry for watching this back. I know we just saw this footage, but I just want to see whether or not they actually forgot this damage. Yeah, so Jacob's consolidating his damage. We already saw that. Goes to 10. So it looks like based on these dice, it is 10 to 14. So Sabine gets buffed, and I think we're going to see the Fleet Lieutenant swinging into. Yes, Fleet Lieutenant hits the base, but it looks like no damage is added. Huh. Well, that is a considerable error. And then also, Sabine attacks and defeats the Spec Force soldier, but it looks like she only takes 1 damage instead of 2. I think she had 2 damage on her from hitting the opposing Sabine, but now maybe this is just not, maybe I'm just not making this out correctly with these dice, but it certainly looks to me as if Marcelli's base should have taken 3 damage this turn and did not, and that Sabine should have 4 damage on her instead of 3. Oh, okay. It looks like he notices now and changes it. Okay. So that is going to be there is the 15 damage on the base, and I do think Sabine should have 1 more damage on her, but I'm not entirely sure. It's interesting that Marcelli opted to take out the Spec Force soldier instead of doing 7 damage to his opponent's base. But I think at a currently lower life total, he's trying to sort of control the game more rather than trying to push as much damage as possible. Right now, Jacob's base has taken 10, and it looks like Marcelli's base has taken 17. So Jacob has 15 life left and Marcelli 8. Another K2SO deploys for Jacob, certainly a strong unit to have on your side of the field, especially in this sort of situation where the when defeated trigger is very relevant. I'm not entirely sure. Hmm. So if Marcelli had attacked the base instead of with his highly buffed Sabine, he would have done 7 damage, which would have put Jacob on 17, 17 damage inflicted. But then Marcelli would have taken 2 more from that copy of Spec Force soldiers, which would have put him in turn at 19. So he only would have had 6 left. And then, yeah, I guess at that point you have to be really worried about certain stuff. So maybe it was better to take out the. I'm not sure though. It's sort of forfeiting a lot of damage. I guess he still does. Well, he should have still done 1 damage to the base with Sabine's ability, but they might have missed that. I'm not actually sure because I think Jacob's base should now be at 11 from that on attack. Hmm. Well, hard to say exactly what's going on there. There could have been some missed triggers. It looked like one of them was maybe keeping track of life off to the side, so it's possible that the actual physical tokens are just not updated. I'm not entirely sure. I was, of course, not there. All right, we're going into the next round, and this could possibly be the last round of the game. Um, Jacob definitely has the potential to do lethal damage with the cards that he has on the board here, and the question is how Marcelli can try to avoid that and navigate this crucial turn. Let's see how things progress. There's thinking about the situation. So right now, We have 7 damage against base on board, 9 damage against base on board from Marcelli, which is not lethal. And Jacob has 10 on board, which very much is. And so it looks like the game is ending, and I can only assume that's a scoop from Marcelli. Yeah, looks like they've updated in the bottom left corner, they've updated the round counter and Jacob does get the win. So now we're doing some sideboarding here and interesting sideboard there. So Marcelli, it looks like he has some copies of Bright Hope. Looks like he has some copies of Wolf, some Disabling Fang Fighters, and then a Heroic Sacrifice. I can only assume that in this situation we're going to see those Bright Hopes coming into the build. Meanwhile, Jacob, I think I might have seen Admiral Akbar there. I'm not sure. Also some Fang Fighters over there. Disabling Fang Fighter, very useful sideboard card against decks that are running Traitorous in particular. That can be a nasty threat for an aggro deck, but Disabling Fang Fighter just really crushes that. In fact, if you play Traitorous and your opponent plays Fang Fighter, you are now incredibly behind, because not only does your play get negated by something cheaper, the opponent also gained a unit, and they still have 2 resources on you, which is really, really not where you want to be. Yeah, it looks like 2 copies of Admiral Akbar, and then is that other one a heroic sacrifice or something being added there? And it looked like he removed a gorilla attack pod or two, and maybe removed a metal ceremony, I think. And then thinking about some other cards, Bright Hope is, I think, a pretty good sideboard card here, as is Consortium Star Viper, if you have that in the sideboard. Consortium Star Viper is currently an extremely strong option against the early fighters that these Rebel aggro decks like to play, but the problem is that relative to Bright Hope, Consortium Star Viper, number one, is reliant on the Energy Conversion Lab, and number two, Consortium Star Viper suffers from not being heroism, so it degrades your odds when it comes to using for a cause I believe in. Both players shuffling up now, and we'll see what they end up doing in this second round. We have some sideboard options. Maybe those Bright Hopes coming in here to try to counter the opponent's space aggro. Get those, intercept those A-wings before they can do too much damage to the base. I do think in that previous game that Marcelli, oops, sorry, I paused by mistake. I think that Marcelli playing an A-wing into red 3 rather than ambushing and then ambushing on the next turn was a significant downside early in the game because it allowed red 3 to get another kill. I also think it's possible that once he had the buffed Sabine, he should have been trying to race. I don't know for sure, though. Either way, it seems like he was not quite able to get there, and we'll see whether or not he can do a more successful performance here in round two or game two of round two here at Super Showdown Poznan. And the players are heavily shuffling here, and we'll see where we go from there. Marcelli does get to go first, which is a substantial advantage in my view in this matchup. I think that in general, if you can hold the tempo, you have an edge. In large part because you of the dynamic that I described earlier in the video, where many of the early plays for these decks are mutually countering each other depending on who's going first. So like the A-wing advantage if both players play A-wing and you're going first, or the Sabine Wren explosives artist advantage if both players play Sabine and you're going first. Um, Additionally, going first just tempo wise is very useful in terms of potentially being able to take out the opponent's base before they take out yours if it does end up just in a straight race. But we'll have to see how things go. It's very possible that the dynamic will shift, and one of the players will be in a more control role while the other decides to be more aggressive and try to be the beatdown. In general, these decks are better at being the beatdown, though it is conceivable that sideboarding might change that. So let's get into the round. Marcelli drawing his 6 cards, as is Jacob. Let's go. So resource-wise, looks like we have, let's see, there's Metal Ceremony, Spec Force Soldier, Heroic Sacrifice. Looks like there is a Battlefield Marine in hand. That's a good starting unit for Marcelli. For Jacob, it looks like we have a Fighters for Freedom, a Green Squadron A-Wing. Not sure if that's an Echo Base Defender. A little hard to tell, with the cards and the, potential sleeves and glare and stuff, but we'll see what we get. Looks like I think Marcelli has decided to keep while Jacob has decided to mulligan. I wonder, or maybe Marcelli has not decided to keep. Also, my apologies if I'm pronouncing these names wrong. It's one of those things. I know a guy named Marcello whose name is spelled similar to Marcelli there, so I'm just sort of assuming they're pronounced similarly, but I could be completely wrong. So my apologies if so. All right, after some shuffling, Jacob is getting his new hand. Let's see if he can draw some good cards. Now it's interesting to note that he actually missed his turn 1 play in the previous game, but was still able to get the win, which, pretty solid given the aggressive nature of this matchup. Missing your turn 1 play is really not what you want to be doing. Okay, looks like he has an X-Wing, an A-Wing, red 3, not sure what he just resourced. Is he really going to resource the A-Wing here? Why would you resource the A-Wing instead of the X-Wing? No, he's reconsidering. I think there's a fleet lieutenant. Yeah, so he has a wing leader, a fleet lieutenant. Not entirely sure what the card furthest to his left right now is. I can recognize some, but not all of the card arts from just a little corner. Maybe that's a steadfast battalion? I'm not sure. Considering his options, resources, I think that's an event, and then resources, whatever that card was. All right, Battlefield Marine leads us off, and I think the A-Wing is going to be the reply here from Jacob. Battlefield Marine, a very strong card, 2 cost 3/3 vanilla. Not an exciting card in terms of what its ability does, but it just being a unit with very efficient stats for the price is worth a fair bit. So Jacob now almost certainly I think going to play this A-Wing. No, he's thinking about playing the X-Wing instead. Goes with the A-Wing. Yep. Okay. I'm wondering if this is going to be a space versus ground race. Ooh, and I believe, I'm not 100% confident, but I believe that Jacob is actually using the organized play alternate border zoomed in A-Wing from those weekly play packs there. I think that's what I see. So a little fancy version of that card. And now we'll see how things continue. Marcelli just takes a swing there for 3 damage with the Battlefield Marine. Fairly standard gameplay there. Ooh, wing leader buffing the A-wing. This is a really good play. This is one of the things that can be very threatening in this matchup. Wing leader buffing up a unit can really get out of hand. Let's see if Marcelli has an answer. Doesn't look like it. It's an echo-based defender. On the plus side, that will not only allow him to threaten some more damage in the ground arena, but it does potentially prevent his opponent Sabine Wren from attacking his base once she deploys. However, Jacob lands 5 damage with that buffed A-wing and is now ahead on overall damage inflicted. If I'm Jacob, I'm probably looking to use Sabine's ability to do damage to both bases in this scenario, assuming that Marcelli takes the initiative. And the reason for that is that I'm currently ahead in terms of damage inflicted and trying to bring the game to a conclusion more rapidly. Although on the other hand, there is a risk of getting destroyed by like a rebel assault or something if you get too close. But I think that Jacob just seems to share my thoughts there, using Sabine's ability to deal 1 damage to each base. So now I believe we have 4 damage on Jacob's base compared to 4 damage on Jacob's base and 6 damage on Marcelli's base. And that mighty A-Wing is probably the most threatening unit on the board. Both players resourcing. Is there a wolf in Jacob's hand? I don't think he had wolf there, though I'm not confident, and I'm not sure that's a card that you most want in this matchup. The anti-healing isn't that relevant, so it might well be something different, or he could just be playing Wolf either in main deck or sideboarding it in just to have another kind of aggressive unit with the 2-cost 3/2. Not entirely sure. However, it is Marcelli who has the initiative for this turn. His Echo Base Defender will probably take a swing here, I think, as attacking will prevent a potential ambush play from negating that. Yep, that's exactly right. 4 damage to base, thanks to the Echo Base Defender. Little fun fact, game designer Tyler Parrott was once discussing on Twitter, or I'm sorry, X.com. Tyler was discussing how early on in development, the Echo Base Defender had actually been a 3/4 with Sentinel. And unfortunately, that was extremely overpowered, so they changed it to 4/3, and the card became a lot more reasonable. And I think that is because 3 is a very relevant breakpoint in terms of there are initial units that can deal 3 damage. There are not initial units that can deal 4 damage, at least not under normal conditions. So at 3/4 Sentinel, you could play that into this Battlefield Marine, and the Marine would not be able to defeat you. At 4/3 Sentinel, that's at least a trade. All right, so the both sides just swinging in. It looks like we're now at 11 damage on Jacob's base and 13 damage on Marcelli's base, but Marcelli's Echo Base Defender does mean that his opponent Sabine can't attack the base directly, and that might be crucial in this scenario. Though it does look like Jacob has a copy of the Spec Force Soldier, which could remove that Sentinel at a key moment. If he has a K2, using K2 to ambush with ECL, defeat the Echo Base Defender, do 1 overwhelm to the base, and then do 3 more to the base with when defeated, would I think actually be a very reasonable play. But I'm not sure that he has a copy of that in hand at this time. Jacob thinking over his options, I believe. Does have a For a Cause I Believe in hand. That could potentially do up to 4 damage. He goes for it for a cause I believe in. So he's going to top deck 4 cards, and for each one that has the heroism aspect, it's 1 damage. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 for 4 on that for a cause I believe in. So that's going to be 4 damage to Marcelli's base, leaving him at. Um, so he was at 13 damage. He will now go to 17 damage. And now you get to choose whether to discard those cards or put them back on top of the deck in an order of your choosing. Marcelli having taken 17 damage here, only 8 HP remaining. Yeah, so okay, so I think if you're Jacob, what you do now is deploy Sabine, use the Spec Force Soldier, hit Marcelli's base for 3, and then he will have taken 20 damage, which means he only has 5 HP left, which means that a single attack from your A-Wing closes the game. So I think that's what you do to try to get into a position where you only need 1 action to win on the next turn. And that seems like honestly a pretty strong line of play to me, but we'll have to see. We'll have to see whether Jacob is thinking the same thing. Currently, is he's maybe still thinking about the ordering of the cards from For a Cause I Believe in? I think if it's me, I just discard every one of those cards. None of them are threatening. Yeah, and I think that's what he did. I think he discarded them. So none of those cards are threatening like reach. What you really want is like another For a Cause I Believe in, a K2, a Guerrilla Attack. I guess not a Guerrilla Attack Pod because the game will probably end before you get a chance to play it. But another K2, or a K2, another For a Cause, anything oh, and it's a counter For a Cause I Believe in from Marcelli. K2, Heroic Sacrifice, A-Wing, and Guerrilla Attack Pod, 4 damage there as well. So Jacob now having taken 15 damage. Very interesting situation here. Guerrilla Attack Pod removed. And I think maybe you keep the K2? No, or maybe you keep the Heroic Sacrifice for burst damage? No, it's a full discard for Marcelli as well. Okay, so now I don't think Jacob has actually put the damage on the base, but he should now, I believe, have taken 15 total damage, leaving him on 10 HP. So this creates an interesting scenario. So if he goes for the play that I was discussing, where he uses the Spec Force soldier to clear the way for Sabine, he can get into a position where he would win with a single attack from his A-Wing, but it is I think he will be in a position where if Marcelli has a rebel assault, he can win the game himself. Could be wrong though. Let's see what happens. Sabine deploys. Marcelli still has a resource. But he also has a metal ceremony. If he plays that metal ceremony, he can buff his Echo Base Defender up to being a 5/4, which would mean that Sabine cannot attack into it and live. That's exactly what he does. So metal ceremony buffing the defender. So yeah, I think what he's thinking there is that even though he could get more value out of that metal ceremony if his Sabine attacks first, by doing it in this order, he creates a situation where his opponent's Sabine cannot attack into the Echo Base Defender and live. However, the Spec Force soldier comes out, removing Sentinel from the Echo Base Defender for the turn, and that is going to allow Jacob Sabine to sneak into the base for 3 damage. Um, unless there's some way for Marcelli. No, there's I don't think there's anything in the deck. If he had a heroic sacrifice, he could. No, even that wouldn't actually work. So that's only +2. Okay, so then we see Sabine swings into Jacob's base, hitting for 3. So I think there is 7 damage that has not been put on the counters. I think they are writing it down on the side. But I believe that Jacob's base has now had 18 damage taken. And Marcelli's base has 20 damage taken, which you can sort of see on those dice. Which does mean that if Jacob gets a chance to attack with his Green Squadron A-Wing, that is it for the match. Oh, but it's Rebel Assault. Marcelli has the Rebel Assault that he needs to make 2 attacks, clear Jacob's base, and win the game. So Rebel Assault allows you to attack with a Rebel unit at +1 power, then attack with another Rebel unit at +1 power. So the Echo Base Defender and the Battlefield Marine, buffed already by the Metal Ceremony, can attack there for 6 damage from the Echo Base Defender and 5 from the Marine, inflicting 11 total damage and clearing out the base. So 1-1 now, and we're going into round 3. It doesn't look like either player is adjusting their sideboard further. So we're going to see what happens here in this next round of this tournament. Players shuffling up, round 3. Jacob does get to go first, and we will see who will prevail in this clash of the aggro decks. Sabine versus Sabine. Not one of the slower matchups in the game, quite frankly. Might be one of the fastest matchups in the game. The player. Oh wait, maybe we are seeing some sideboarding. Not entirely sure. Maybe I don't know if it's sideboarding, if he's just verifying that he has the right number of cards or what exactly, but no, he's making some changes. He cuts the gorilla attack pods, and I think it's two metal ceremonies going in instead of them. Perhaps he had removed those metal ceremonies earlier and then decided that actually they were more desirable than the gorilla attack pod in this matchup, which I think I would agree with. So the issue with gorilla attack pod is just that it's really slow. And yeah, I don't know. It doesn't seem great to me. Like it is a good card, but in this matchup it is slow. And slow is not what you want. I mean, these games are ending before you get to 6 resources, I believe. All right, shuffling up. Okay, here we go. Also, while filming this video, I think this is an argument maybe for the 1.25x speed, as it is taking a little longer than some Sabine matchups might. I think, perhaps the players are, perhaps the players are being more thoughtful, given that it is a tournament that has some actual prize support and an actual cool event. I think sometimes you see people playing very fast when they're doing stuff with low stakes, but a combination of nerves and deliberation and so on can slow down the pace a bit when you're playing in a real life event with substantial prizes. One other factor that doesn't always get discussed is that there is sometimes what I like to call tournament fatigue, which is a factor. It's probably not a big deal in this round, but once you get to the later rounds of a big in-person tournament, you might have been playing a game for, many hours in a row, and you get to the point where your decision making is a little fogged up. I've had some crazy tournaments. There's been like 4 or 5 rounds. I think I played in a tournament once that was I believe I think it was actually 5 rounds. So it was 5 rounds of Star Wars Legion in one day, and Star Wars Legion takes like 2 to 3 hours. So that was an intense schedule. Um, and it's other tournaments, card game tournaments are going to have shorter rounds, but they're also going to have a lot more than 5 rounds, especially in a game like this with 2 out of 3s. So that can be a factor as well, though I doubt it's setting in for these players this early in the event. All right, Jacob gets to lead us off this time. Let's see what he's going to do. There is a Battlefield Marine in hand. That would be a pretty solid starting play. I believe there's a fancy Sabine there. The version of Sabine from the organized play weekly play kits, I think, is in the deck. Let's see how Jacob's going to lead us off. Honestly, the Battlefield Marine seems like a nice solid start. That's probably what I would do. Battlefield Marine looks like he has a wing leader and a red 3, so either of those are good options to get some buffs going and keep the pressure on. Let's see what he chooses. All right. Both players have resourced. Jacob has the initiative, and it looks like it is gonna be, well, just thinking about it. It was looking like it was gonna be just the Battlefield Marine, which I think is probably what I would do, but maybe he's going for Sabine here? Yeah, Sabine. So that is the fancy version of Sabine from the organized play kit. We see a Green Squadron A-Wing on the other side of the board. Initiative taken here by Jacob. So here's a question. If you're Jacob, do you go for ECL ambush rid 3 to kill your opponent's A-Wing? So that would not only clear the A-Wing, but it would also potentially buff Sabine later in the turn. Yeah, and it looks like he's going for it. Yeah, there you go. And wow, and Marcelli responds with the exact same play. This situation or almost this exact situation actually happened to me in the showcase series earlier. So now we're seeing Jacob attack Marcelli's base for 3. So Jacob getting the early damage advantage, but Marcelli is the one who's red 3 ended up on the field with the ability to potentially buff units later in the game. Marcelli has taken the initiative. Jacob uses Sabine for 1 damage to each base, so I believe it is now 4-1. This is an exciting situation with with the match on the line here. Jacob has an early lead in terms of life total, but each player has 1 unit on the board, and Marcelli's unit is stronger, as Red 3 does offer that buff to the rest of the side, which could end up being decisive. However, we'll have to see how it goes. Okay, Marcelli with the initiative here. Both players have used their ECL, so we won't be seeing any K2 or Steadfast Battalion ambushes this game. Looks like Marcelli opts for a simple attack, 3 damage to base. Ooh, and a wing leader comes out. Jacob plays a wing leader, buffing his small Sabine with two experience. Now a mighty 4/5 with that on attack ability to potentially deal 1 damage to the defending player or to the base, which could actually allow this Sabine to defeat the opponent's Sabine. K2 hitting the field from Marcelli. So Jacob could clear K2 with Sabine and deal 1 damage to the base, or he could just go for racing. I think if I'm Jacob, do I race here? Let's see here. Yeah, so he can do 8 damage to base this turn. That would put the opponent on 12 damage taken. He would take 4 damage himself. Um, yeah, I mean, at least arguably that buffed Sabine allows you to win this race. The question is really, do you just race or do you have the buffed Sabine take out K2? He could take out K2, deal 1 damage to the enemy base with Sabine's ability. No, I think you go for the base here. Let's see if Jacob is thinking the same thing. He leads off with his Sabine, swinging into. Oh, no, he's reconsidering. It looked like he was going to lead off there with his Sabine into the base for 3, and I think that would have been a good play, but he's thinking about his options. Oh, okay. Okay, he is going to slow down on racing and do a little control there, using his buffed Sabine to defeat his opponent's Sabine, and then swinging, I believe, into the base there for 3, and then a medal ceremony to follow up. Nice. 1 experience to each of those units. Now, this does mean that K2 can attack and clear the buffed Sabine on this turn. So K2 would be able to swing in for 4, and that would be exactly enough to defeat the buffed Sabine Explosives Artist there. However, K2 would then get his when defeated trigger for 3 damage to the opposing base. Oh, and actually with red 3, there would be 1 overwhelm as well, because it would actually be hitting for 5, not 4. And I think we did see a Fleet Lieutenant in hand for Marcelli. So if he plays the Fleet Lieutenant, he could actually have K2 hit for 7, which would then in fact deal 3 overwhelm as well as the 3 other damage. That might be a strong play. That might be a strong play to get the buffed Sabine, who you really can't have on the board much longer, out of there. I think he kind of has to control that unit or he's just going to lose the race. Interesting. Did he resource the Fleet Lieutenant? Hmm. I wonder if he has a Noble Sacrifice or something. Noble Sacrifice on K2 here would be really good also. Ooh, and he does also have a Rebel Assault, which he could potentially use here in a similar fashion. So Rebel Assault would actually be really good because it would guarantee that the red 3 gets to attack, whereas if he just straight attacks with K2, the Wing Leader might well trade for red 3. No, he just does go for the straight attack, not using any of the buff options that he had available. So it is going to be 1 overwhelm to the base, and then probably 3 more to base from K2. Unless he makes his opponent discard a card, but I think it's got to be to the base. Ooh, Admiral Akbar removing red 3 without red 3 getting a chance to attack. This is why I think playing that Rebel Assault would have been good. It would have allowed that red 3 to get some guaranteed damage. Also, they haven't updated the damage on the base, but I believe Jacob should have taken 4 damage from that K2 attack, 1 from Overwhelm and 3 from K2 being defeated. Not entirely sure. I may have missed something. 2 to base from the Wing Leader. A-Wing on the field. And Marcelli plays Fighters for Freedom, so maybe a bit of a sequencing error there. Not entirely sure, but if he had played the Fighters for Freedom first, he would have been able to deal 1 damage to his opponent's base by playing the A-Wing, because Fighters for Freedom allows you to deal damage when you play other red cards. A Battlefield Marine hits the field. We haven't seen Jacob's life total updated, but Jacob seems to be far ahead in this game right now. He still has an experienced Sabine, Akbar, the Battlefield Marine, the Wing Leader. On the other hand, with that, there is still that Rebel Assault could be used here. So that would allow for 4, it would do, what, 8 damage? Even with the 4 damage that should be on Jacob's base here, an additional 8 would not be lethal. And so I believe what's been going on with these life totals also, I believe, though I'm not sure, that the players have been writing down life totals on a pad, which is a common practice among tournament players in some card games. I've seen that in Flesh and Blood, and I know it's prevalent in Magic as well. I believe they have not always updating the counters. It looks like Jacob's updating it now. Or no, he actually just removes them. I believe Jacob's base is at 7. And Marcelli swings in for 3, which I believe puts Jacob at 10 damage taken. I don't know. This is looking real bad for Marcelli. So if he has taken 10, let's see. So then the A-Wing could swing in for another 3. That would be 13. And then next turn, a Rebel Assault would do 8. That's 21. That's not good enough. Oh, but he could play the For a Cause and swing in with the A-Wing and then try to win with the Rebel Assault. Does that work? The problem is Jacob very plausibly has lethal this turn if he has some buffs. So Akbar attacks. Akbar does have Restore 1, so I believe that takes Jacob's base down to 9 damage taken. But I don't know, maybe Marcelli can do this. So if Jacob doesn't have lethal this turn, and it looks like he doesn't, maybe we can see some Rebel Assault play. A-Wing knocks out the A-Wing knocks out the wing leader. For a cause I believe in played here, so it's going to do 1, 2, 3. It does 4 damage, and it actually should go to 5 damage with the it should actually go to 5 damage with the Fighters for Freedom, which I believe puts Jacob at 14 damage taken. And those cards left on the top of the deck. And yeah, it looks like Marcelli does remember the Fighters for Freedom trigger there for the additional damage. I think he was pointing that out. Unfortunately, Jacob is not using the counters in a way that makes the life total totally obvious, but I believe he is at 14 damage taken. Hopefully, I am not getting this wrong. Assuming everyone's remembered their triggers and all that, and assuming that I haven't made any error in the accounting. The buffed Sabine swings in, I believe, for 4 damage to Marcelli's base. That should put him up to, is that 17 taken? Oh, he has another for a cause in hand. Second for a cause I believe in. That's gonna deal 4 or 5. He put all the cards back, so it does 5 damage again. So now I believe Jacob is at 19, and now this means that Marcelli can play that Rebel Assault and win the game, I believe, unless Jacob finds lethal this turn, and I don't think he has it. He can swing for 4 more to the base, and it looks like they didn't add the damage from Sabine. Actually, Sabine should have been 5 to the base, so it should be 18, and he can do 4 more, 22, but then Marcelli has the initiative. I think Jacob has to take the initiative and hope to draw Rebel Assault. And it seems like he thinks similar, taking the initiative here rather than swinging with the Marine. If he draws a Rebel Assault, I think he has lethal because he can do. So Marcelli's base should be at I think at 18, and if it is at 18, that's only 7 left, and a Rebel Assault would be lethal. He draws it, Rebel Assault. And there's the fist bump. So Jacob, seeing that he was at risk, takes the initiative early and draws the Rebel Assault that he needs in order to get the win. I believe that's what we saw. It's a little tough to tell, but I believe that's what we saw. And yeah, they've updated the score with 2 for Jacob. So yeah, that was a victory for Jacob in an intense Sabine mirror there. And that also was a substantially longer game than a lot of Sabine mirrors that I've seen, but interesting match. Okay, so that's going to do it for this one, guys. Thanks to you all for watching. Let me know what you think about normal speed versus sped up. Currently, I'm inclined to do future videos in this series sped up, given that that one took a fair bit of time. But if you prefer the normal speed, or if you strongly prefer it being sped up or whatever, let me know in the video. Let me know in the video comments below. Let me know also if there's any other stuff you'd like to see. That's going to do it for this one, guys. Thanks to y'all for watching, and we'll be back later with some more Star Wars Unlimited content. Catch you guys later.